The story follows Hee-jin, a young woman working as a waitress in a noisy beer shop. Life has not been kind to her appearance, and the customers never let her forget it. One evening, a drunken man mocked her harshly, comparing her to a much prettier waitress standing nearby. Though her heart ached, Hee-jin forced a smile, swallowing her sadness as she continued serving, as if nothing had happened. After her long shift, she rushed to her best friend's birthday party. Her best friend, Hari, was everything Hee-jin wasn't. Radiant, beautiful, and adored by everyone around her. Despite this striking contrast, the two shared a deep bond. They had grown up together, and Hee-jin's loyalty to Hari never faltered. During the celebration, laughter turned to panic when Hari slipped and fell into the swimming pool. Without hesitation, several young men dove into the water to rescue the dazzling birthday girl. In the commotion, Hee-jin was accidentally shoved into the pool as well. She flailed helplessly, sinking deeper, but no one noticed. All eyes were on Hari. Luckily, the pool wasn't too deep. Gasping, drenched, and trembling, Hee-jin managed to climb out on her own. She stood quietly, watching as her glamorous friend was carried out of the water by several concerned hands. Surrounded by warmth and affection, Hee-jin, once again invisible, quietly slipped away from the party. Walking home alone under the night sky, she couldn't even cry. The tears refused to come, perhaps because she had grown too used to this kind of loneliness. In a world that valued beauty, her plainness was a heavy curse, closing doors to opportunity, love, and respect. But Hee-jin's story held a hidden truth no one around her knew. She had not always been this way. In her past, she had been breathtakingly beautiful, the kind of girl who turned heads wherever she went. Back in middle school, she was considered the most stunning girl in her class, admired by many boys, the secret crush of nearly all of them. Yet despite her beauty, Hee-jin had never been arrogant. She was kind-hearted, especially to those who were overlooked, just like she would one day be. One memory stood out. A new transfer student, Han Sungjin, arrived in her class. Chubby and awkward, he immediately became the target of cruel teasing. While others laughed, only Hee-jin stepped forward to defend him. She chased the bullies away and comforted him, extending a hand of genuine friendship. Sungjin carried deep scars of his own. His mother had died during a heavy rainstorm, leaving him traumatized. Every time it rained, panic consumed him. One day, when the skies opened and fear overtook him again, it was Hee-jin who stayed by his side. She held her shirt above him to shield him from the downpour and gently placed her headphones over his ears, distracting him from his sorrow. Slowly, the boy calmed down, his frightened eyes meeting hers with gratitude. That was the Hee-jin few remembered, the girl whose beauty shone not just on the outside but from within. After that rainy day long ago, when Hee-jin shielded Han Sungjin and promised to protect him, the two quickly grew inseparable. Their bond deepened beyond mere friendship, but fate had other plans. Sungjin's father moved abroad for work, forcing him to leave. On the day of his departure, Sungjin nervously mustered the courage to kiss Hee-jin and made a heartfelt promise. One day, they would meet again. 2 decades passed. Hee-jin was no longer the admired beauty of her youth. Life had been unkind. Her appearance had changed drastically, and her self-esteem had withered. One morning, she dragged herself to a job interview after a terrible day. Already running late, she rushed into a crowded elevator. Moments later, another stunning young woman entered, tipping the elevator into overload. Instead of leaving herself, the beautiful girl arrogantly acted as if Hee-jin should step out. Everyone stayed silent, waiting for Hee-jin to move. But then, out of nowhere, a man pushed the beautiful girl out and called Hee-jin back inside, allowing her to make it just in time for the interview. Inside, the panel grilled her on why she couldn't keep a job longer than 3 months. Hee-jin, painfully honest, explained that her bosses often got arrested, or the company she joined went bankrupt soon after. Her blunt truthfulness drew laughter from the other candidates and sighs from the interviewers. She knew the results without needing the rejection email. Still, that night, she sat by her computer, refreshing her inbox, hoping against hope. Instead of the company's reply, a different email popped up, signed by Han Sungjin, her childhood friend. Memories of the kind, chubby boy she once defended flooded back. Excited, Hee-jin could hardly sleep. The next evening, she rushed to their meeting spot, her heart racing. From afar, she spotted a chubby man devouring food at a table. Without hesitation, she ran to him, slapped his shoulder playfully, and called out Sungjin's name. She grabbed his hand, smiling brightly, telling him he hadn't changed a bit. But the man only stared at her in confusion. He pulled his hand away and asked coldly who she was. In that instant, Hee-jin realized her mistake. He wasn't Sungjin. Just then, her phone rang. The caller ID flashed, Sungjin. She answered, and at that exact moment, a tall, handsome man appeared in front of her, also speaking on his phone. He was the real Sungjin. The voice on her phone matched his every word. Hee-jin froze. The fat boy she once knew, the awkward, bullied child, had transformed into a confident, breathtakingly handsome man. But what shocked her even more was what happened next. Sungjin walked past her as though she wasn't even there. His eyes locked onto the beautiful woman standing behind her, and he greeted her warmly. In that moment, Hee-jin's heart sank. He didn't recognize her at all. How could he? The dazzling girl he once kissed under the rain, the girl he had promised to meet again, was long gone. Before him now stood only an ugly duckling with frizzy hair and a face the world overlooked. For Hee-jin, it was as if destiny itself was mocking her. After witnessing Sungjin's shocking transformation, Hee-jin's heart was crushed. She had dreamed of their reunion for years, but now, faced with his handsome appearance and her own diminished self-image, she lost all courage to approach him. Instead, she hid in the shadows, quietly watching as he looked around in confusion after mistaking someone else for her. When she finally turned away, walking home absent-mindedly, she happened to cross paths with her best friend Hari. Hari instantly noticed the sadness on her face. Having lived with Hee-jin for years, Hari could read her like an open book. Through trembling words, Hee-jin confessed that she couldn't face Sungjin. In his memory, she was still the radiant, beautiful girl he once adored. If he saw her now, frizzy-haired, plain, and overlooked, he would only feel disappointment. "I'm not worthy of him anymore," she whispered. Hari tried to encourage her, reminding her that Sungjin's bond with her wasn't built on beauty alone. But no matter how much Hari consoled her, Hee-jin's insecurities ran too deep. Finally, unable to bear the thought of leaving Sungjin waiting, she came up with a desperate idea. Hari, beautiful, confident, and admired by all, would pretend to be Hee-jin and meet him. Without hesitation, Hari agreed. The next day, she walked boldly towards Sungjin, her beauty shining like the Hee-jin he remembered from long ago. The moment Sungjin saw her, his face lit up with joy. "Hee-jin!" he called warmly before pulling her into an intimate embrace. From a distance, the real Hee-jin could only watch with aching eyes as the two entered a restaurant together. Every smile Sungjin gave Hari, every tender glance he directed at her, pierced Hee-jin's heart. Inside, Sungjin couldn't take his eyes off Hari, believing wholeheartedly that she was the girl from his past. He began asking about her current life, questions that Hari had been coached to answer. Hee-jin had carefully prepared her friend, teaching her responses word for word. But not everything went according to plan. Some questions weren't rehearsed. Sitting nearby, Hee-jin frantically used hand gestures and body language to signal the right answers. But Hari, confused, stumbled over her replies. Still, Sungjin was too captivated to notice her hesitation. The conversation soon turned to their shared childhood memories, moments only Hee-jin and Sungjin had lived through. Hari repeated the stories exactly as Hee-jin had taught her. Moved, Sungjin opened his heart, thanking Hee-jin for never abandoning him back then, for shielding him during his darkest days, for being the one person who gave him hope when he had none. Though the words were directed at Hari, they pierced deep into the real Heejin's soul. From the sidelines, her eyes welled with unspoken emotion. In that moment, she felt comfort, relieved that Sungjin still remembered her kindness, even if he didn't know it was truly her sitting just a few feet away. As the evening ended, Hari followed Heejin's instructions for their final step. She told Sungjin that she would soon be going abroad to study, meaning they wouldn't be able to see each other again. The news devastated him. To finally reunite with his first love, only to lose her again within hours. It was unbearable. His disappointment was plain, and yet, he had no choice but to accept it. For Heejin, it was bittersweet. She had protected her secret. She had given Sungjin closure. But at what cost? Hari had completed her role as the fake Heejin. She was ready to leave Sungjin behind when suddenly, he called her back. With a boyish sincerity that hadn't changed since childhood, he asked her to wait just 5 minutes. Sungjin dashed into a nearby store, bought something small, and carefully wrapped it in a gift box. When he returned, he handed it to Hari with trembling hands. He wiped his palms clean, pretending to offer just a handshake, but instead, he pulled her into a tight embrace. An embrace that spoke of reluctance, longing, and the sorrow of parting too soon. From the corner, the real Heejin watched silently, her chest tightening with pain. She could only look on as the man she once promised to protect now poured his heart into another woman who carried her name. She returned home with tears burning in her eyes. Later that night, Hari opened the gift. Inside was an umbrella. Heejin wasn't surprised. She immediately understood the meaning behind it. Long ago, as children, she had used her raincoat to shield Sungjin during a storm. Back then, she promised to become his umbrella, to protect him from life's downpours. Now, after all these years, Sungjin was returning that promise. With this umbrella, he was telling her, "Now it's my turn to protect you." But that love, that promise, could no longer reach her. With trembling fingers, Heejin sat before her computer and stared at Sungjin's emails. After hesitating for a long time, she finally pressed delete, erasing not just the messages, but the fragile hope she still carried for him. The next morning, life offered her a new beginning. She turned on her phone and discovered that she had passed the interview. For once, she wasn't a failure. For once, she could hold her head high and prove her worth. Filled with pride, she prepared herself to give her all to this new company. But fate, mischievous as ever, had other plans. When she arrived at the office, she froze in shock. Standing before her as the deputy editor, the very man she would be working with every single day, was Sungjin. Her heart nearly stopped. Covering her mouth, she ducked into a corner to avoid his eyes. From there, she peered at him through the glass door, unable to believe what she was seeing. Though he didn't recognize her, just the sight of him made her heart pound violently. Panic overwhelmed her, and she bolted. She slipped into an elevator, clutching her chest to calm her racing heart. But as the doors closed, she nearly fainted, because inside the elevator was Sungjin himself. The lights flickered, then went out. The elevator jolted to a stop. Trapped in the confined space, Heejin's composure shattered. Trembling in fear, she pounded desperately on the door, her voice shaking. Sungjin frowned, clearly irritated, and gently pulled her back from the door. Taking her employee badge, he glanced at the name and read it aloud, Heejin. For one breathless moment, she thought he had recognized her. Her lips tightened, her whole body stiffened. But Sungjin, calm and unknowing, simply assumed it was coincidence. Just a colleague with the same name as his first love. He tried to reassure her, but Heejin shrank into the corner of the elevator, pressing herself against the wall as if she could disappear. Sungjin looked at her in bewilderment. To him, she appeared unstable, almost fragile. He had no idea the storm raging inside her. The pain of standing inches away from the man she loved, the man who remembered a different version of her, a girl long gone. The more Hee-jin tried to hide, to hold her breath and make herself invisible, the more Sungjin grew uneasy, his confusion deepening. Fate had reunited them at last, but under the cruelest of circumstances, trapped in the elevator, Hee-jin held her breath so long that she nearly fainted. Collapsing to the ground, gasping for air, she startled Sungjin, who misunderstood. He thought she suffered from a fear of the dark. Wanting to comfort her, Sungjin instinctively did something that mirrored their childhood. He slipped headphones over her ears and played music, hoping to calm her trembling heart. The melody struck Hee-jin like lightning. This was their song, the same one she once used to soothe him when storms terrified his younger self. Her heart surged with excitement. For a fleeting moment, she wanted to confess everything. That the girl who had sheltered him in the rain, who had given him hope, was standing right in front of him. That she was his first love. But fear chained her tongue. The music ended. The elevator doors slid open. Sungjin walked out casually, unaware of the storm he had just stirred inside her. Hee-jin, left trembling, struggled to steady herself. Soon after, her new job at the fashion magazine officially began. Fate made it cruelly unavoidable. She had to work side by side with Sungjin. On her first assignment, Hee-jin enthusiastically assisted the models, wiping sweat and fixing small details. But in her eagerness, she stepped on the pristine white set, leaving muddy shoe prints that ruined the floor. Sungjin's voice cut through the room, sharp and humiliating. He scolded her loudly in front of everyone, calling her careless and unprofessional. Mortified, Hee-jin bowed her head and apologized over and over. His cold, disparaging eyes only made her shrink further. All she wanted was to disappear. Just then, the intimidating editor-in-chief arrived. Everyone expected Hee-jin's misery to end. Surely the scolding would shift elsewhere. But to her horror, the editor turned on her. Pointing at Hee-jin's frizzy curls, the editor sneered, calling her hair a feather duster with no sense of beauty. Hee-jin tried to defend herself, explaining softly that her curls were natural, not the result of a bad perm. At those words, Sungjin froze. His sharp memory flickered back to that rainy day years ago. His first love, Hee-jin, also had curly hair, curls that appeared when drenched by the storm. She had once confessed that she hated the rain as much as he did, because it revealed her secret. For the first time, Sungjin's cold expression softened. He studied her carefully, as if searching for something familiar, but the editor-in-chief showed no mercy. She moved on to criticize Hee-jin's outdated clothes, mocking her for lacking elegance while working at a fashion magazine. Once again, Hee-jin lowered her head in silence, swallowing humiliation after humiliation. Her days became endless cycles of menial labor, carrying, cleaning, and doing the heavy work no one else wanted. By the end of her shift, utterly drained, Hee-jin confided in Hari. Sitting in the car, she recounted her miserable day, her voice cracking as though the very act of remembering was suffocating her. She tilted her face toward the night sky, trying to catch a breath of fresh air. At that very moment, Sungjin's car drove past. He saw her, vulnerable and broken, but he didn't approach. Instead, he carried his silent longing back to his own empty home, a house large enough for a family, yet cold without her presence. That night, unable to suppress his emotions, Sungjin wrote her a heartfelt letter, but when Hee-jin received it, fear consumed her. Terrified of being discovered, she ran to Hari for help. Hari stepped in once again. She snapped a picture in Europe and sent it to Sungjin, pretending to be enjoying a carefree life abroad. Alongside the photo, she wrote light-hearted words, fabricating the illusion that Hee-jin was happy and thriving far away. Sungjin read the message, his heart torn between joy at her supposed happiness and sorrow that she was still out of reach. But the real Hee-jin sat quietly nearby, invisible once more, hiding her pain behind silence. After Sungjin's heartfelt letter was intercepted by Hari and cleverly redirected with a cheerful photo from Europe, Sungjin believed his first love was living happily abroad. That illusion gave him comfort, and his face softened with a gentle smile. But the very next morning, when he stepped into the office as the deputy chief editor of the magazine, his entire demeanor shifted. The warm, tender Sungjin who missed his childhood first love disappeared, replaced by a strict, almost ruthless professional. He had come from the United States with a mission to turn around this failing Korean fashion magazine. Headquarters had already made the decision to shut it down, but there was one last chance. If Sungjin could lead the team to make the magazine #1 in the industry within just 1 month, the closure order would be revoked. This impossible deadline forced him into a role no one could stand. At meetings, he pressured his subordinates mercilessly. To him, every second counted, so he placed a small hourglass on the table and gave each employee only a few seconds to present ideas. One by one, the staff shared their suggestions for the company's anniversary event. One by one, Sungjin dismissed them all, his criticisms sharp and merciless. The atmosphere in the meeting room was suffocating. The staff shrank back in their chairs, afraid of saying the wrong thing. His voice carried so much weight that when he stomped his foot in frustration, several employees flinched in shock. Among them, Hyejin sat stiff and trembling, unable to breathe properly. She didn't even notice when he suddenly called on her. Startled, she stood up awkwardly, stammering through her words. The sand in the hourglass ran out before she could finish, and Sungjin, without hesitation, kicked her out of the meeting. The humiliation crushed her. She kept asking herself, was it because she was plain? Was it because she wasn't beautiful, like the women Sungjin surrounded himself with? Did he despise her for her looks? Or was it truly because he thought she was incompetent? The staff's resentment grew as well. Sungjin, who had just returned from the US, seemed completely out of touch with Korean sensibilities. During the meeting, he even tore apart magazines the team had poured their hearts into, declaring their work uninspired and outdated. To the staff, he was nothing but arrogant, condescending, and blind to local culture. And yet, when the long day finally ended, a different side of him peeked through. As everyone gathered to leave, Sungjin casually placed his own credit card on the table. He told the staff to go out, relax, and enjoy themselves. He would cover the bill. This sudden gesture left the employees baffled but touched. They realized he wasn't entirely cold-hearted. The truth was, Sungjin wasn't being harsh because he looked down on them. He was fighting against time, trying to unlock the potential hidden within his team. His sharp words, strict rules, and intimidating demeanor were born from desperation, not malice. But of course, Hyejin didn't know this. To her, he was simply the man who constantly belittled her, made her feel worthless, and treated her like an amateur. One afternoon, while carrying out another one of her endless chores for the company, Hyejin's clumsy steps caused her to bump into her boss. She stumbled and fell straight into Sungjin's arms. For a brief second, her heart skipped a beat. Being that close to her first love, feeling his warmth again, made her breath quicken. She wanted to thank him sincerely, but Sungjin looked down at her coldly. Noticing that she still hadn't regained her balance, he pulled his arm away abruptly, letting her crash to the floor. Without a trace of hesitation, he remarked that she must have problems with her eyes and her mind, then walked away into the elevator. That moment broke something inside Hyejin. She decided she could no longer silently endure the humiliation. She had earned her job fair and square. She passed the interview through her own effort, her own qualifications. Everyone in the company made mistakes, yet Sungjin treated her as if she was beneath him, as if she had no right to be there. When she confronted him, Sungjin did not back down. His words cut even deeper. He openly criticized her for being unprofessional, for stammering when she spoke, for lacking the poise and ability expected in the fashion world. He told her she didn't deserve her position. Her experience was lacking, and her very presence wasn't worthy of someone named Hyejin. And then his reasoning became clear. He paid attention to her not because he saw potential, but because she carried the same name as the girl he had cherished long ago, his noble first love. That name triggered his memories, but the woman in front of him, clumsy and awkward, was nothing like the girl in his heart. Hyojin's chest tightened with both anger and heartbreak. She had loved him once, and fate had brought them together again. But he couldn't even see her for who she truly was. The next day, Hyojin decided she would no longer run away. If Sungjin didn't recognize her and even dared to despise her, then she would make sure to stay right by his side every single day until he was forced to notice her. Instead of letting his harsh words crush her, she found strength in them. She walked into the company boldly, no longer hiding her frustration. In front of her colleagues, she began mocking Sungjin openly. She pointed out his constant frown, his awkward personality, and even joked that it was no surprise he had no friends. She laughed about how unapproachable he was, calling him more irritating than a constant itch. Her colleagues laughed nervously, but none of them dared to join in. And then, it happened. Sungjin was standing right behind her, listening the entire time. When Hyojin turned and saw his face, she froze in shock and let out a scream. Everyone else scattered immediately, leaving her alone with the terrifying deputy editor. Sungjin, however, didn't scold her or shout. Instead, he simply pulled the documents she had been sitting on, blew the dust off, and walked away in complete silence. His calmness was even scarier than his anger. Later, Sungjin went to a luxurious hotel for a business meeting, and fate once again interfered. He spotted Hari working there. Surprised, he pulled her aside and asked why she hadn't gone abroad to study, like she had told him. Hari panicked. To hide her true identity, she quickly hugged Sungjin tightly so she could secretly toss away her name tag. Unfortunately, a coworker retrieved it, exposing her lie. Hari was caught. She admitted she hadn't studied abroad but claimed that she had been offered a great job at the hotel, which kept her in Korea. Sungjin, relieved and happy that he could now see Hyojin regularly, believed her story. Hari's heart sank. She knew her lie had gone too far, and now she was trapped. The moment Sungjin left, Hari called Hyojin for help, but her roommate, Shin Hai, picked up the phone instead. Later, when Hari met Hyojin, she confessed that her lie about studying abroad had been exposed. Hyojin, furious, warned Hari never to bring up Sungjin's name again. She swore that she was completely cutting ties with him, and Hari, scared of losing her best friend, didn't dare tell her the full truth about the hotel incident. Hari was now caught in her own web of lies. Unable to face Hyojin's wrath, she decided she would handle Sungjin alone. Meanwhile, Sungjin, deeply buried in work, had a moment of absent-mindedness that showed his exhaustion. He mistook water from a flower vase for coffee and nearly drank it. On his way to work, he stopped at a red light when he suddenly heard someone cheerfully say, "Green light, let's go." That phrase stunned him. It was a line his first love Hyojin used to say when they were young. Coincidentally, the real Hyojin was nearby, crossing the same road. They were so close, yet neither of them recognized each other in the crowd. Sungjin, convinced it must have been Hari, called her to ask, but she denied it. He was left puzzled and restless, while Hyojin walked away unaware. At work, Sungjin continued his relentless push for new ideas, but no matter what his staff suggested, he rejected everything. The team leader asked Hyojin to set up the projector for the next presentation. Nervous and clumsy as always, Hyojin accidentally grabbed the LED pointer instead and aimed it directly at Sungjin's face. Startled and annoyed, Sungjin's patience grew thinner. But this moment, small as it was, planted another seed of recognition in his heart. Something about this chaotic, curly-haired girl tugged at his memories of the Hyojin he once loved. After the embarrassing incident with the blinding lights during the meeting, Hyojin's fear of Sungjin only grew stronger. But to others, especially Shinhyuk, her clumsy and frantic behavior seemed unexpectedly adorable. He teased her constantly, enjoying how flustered she became, while she only wanted to escape his playful torment. Later that day, Sungjin requested the meeting report from Hyojin. Nervous and unprepared, she asked her colleagues to help explain the specialized fashion terms, but everyone was too busy with their own work. Left with no choice, she handed in a report filled with mistakes. When Sungjin read it, His disappointment and anger boiled over. He harshly criticized her incompetence, saying she clearly didn't belong in the fashion department. His words cut deep as he accused her of having gotten the job through the back door, without any real skill or knowledge. Hyojin tried to defend herself, explaining that she had originally been assigned to administrative support but was transferred by her team leader to work in the magazine department. She insisted that she was trying hard to learn fashion terminology on her own. But Sungjin didn't care. He only wanted to work with professionals. He warned her that if she continued like this, she'd be fired. To humiliate her further, he threw the report on the ground and told her to get out. Hurt and humiliated, Hyojin quietly went to the warehouse to help Mina sort cosmetics. But once again, her lack of product knowledge caused problems. Sungjin appeared suddenly to check outfits and assignments, making her even more anxious. As if her struggles weren't enough, Shin Hyuk mischievously tricked her, making her bump her head on a package of noodles, which caused the others to laugh at her expense. It seemed like everywhere she went, someone was ready to mock or belittle her. Defeated, Hyojin thought about returning permanently to the administrative office. At least there she could clean, serve tea, and handle simple errands without being constantly ridiculed. But her manager refused, insisting she stay with the fashion team. She had no choice but to continue. Day after day, she was loaded with small errands, carrying piles of clothes, organizing samples, running around like a spinning pinwheel until late into the night. By the time she finally got on the bus home, she was so exhausted she could barely keep her eyes open. Yet even in her fatigue, when she noticed an elderly woman struggling to stand, Hyojin gave up her seat without hesitation. That kindness, though unseen by most, showed the true nature of her heart at home. She confided in Hari, hoping for sympathy. Instead, her best friend gave her a harsh wake-up call. Hari told her bluntly that every profession has its own specialized knowledge, and the fashion world was no different. If she wanted to survive, she needed to study and adapt. Her constant complaints about Sungjin and others were meaningless unless she was willing to put in the effort. Hari reminded her that since joining the fashion team, she hadn't actively read a single magazine or tried to learn on her own. She only asked others to explain things to her, waiting for shortcuts instead of proactively growing. If she wanted respect, she needed to earn it. Though the words stung, they lingered with Hyojin that night. Lying awake, she realized that Hari was right. She couldn't keep blaming everyone else for her failures. If she wanted to change her situation, she had to change herself first. With renewed determination, she went to Hari's fashion bookshelf and carefully pulled out a stack of magazines. For the first time, she began to study on her own, highlighting terms, making notes, and trying to understand the world she had stumbled into. Hari already knew her best friend well. She knew Hyojin would eventually sneak into her bookshelf to study fashion magazines. So Hari left a handwritten note of encouragement hidden inside. In that note, she reminded Hyojin not to give up, that she was capable of growing, and promised to help her along the way. This small gesture gave Hyojin new determination. From that night onward, Hyojin started her self-improvement journey. By day, she worked hard at the office, and by night she pored over Hari's fashion guides, researching clothing coordination, makeup knowledge, and the basics of brand recognition. She practiced identifying outfits of passers-by on the street, guessing designers, materials, and styles. Little by little, her understanding of fashion grew deeper. Soon, her efforts paid off. At meetings, she was no longer lost in confusing terminology. When she submitted her reports, they were neat, accurate, and well-written, earning recognition even from the strict editor Sungjin, who once dismissed her as unqualified. Though she was still clumsy with her hands and feet, her professional skills were clearly improving, and that gave her confidence. Meanwhile, her colleague Shin Hyuk continued his playful pursuit. After work, he insisted she eat spicy rice cakes with him. Hyojin was bewildered at how persistent and clingy he could be, but she eventually gave in. During the meal, Shin Hyuk purposely spilled sauce on himself and on Hyojin. While she panicked and tried to clean her clothes, he laughed it off, saying clumsiness wasn't something to be ashamed of. It just made her more human. For the first time, Hyojin felt comforted by his lightheartedness. After all the chaos from the previous night, Hyojin finally felt a little relieved. Even though she had been so drunk that she ended up yelling at Sungjin and calling him names, strangely, he didn't scold her or react harshly like he usually did. Instead, he let it slide. This unusual tolerance made Hyojin feel both suspicious and confused. What she didn't know was that Sungjin had already reflected on his own behavior. The day before, while drinking coffee, he overheard a waiter complaining that whenever someone got too focused, they wouldn't hear others talking to them. This made Sungjin realize his own mistake. He often got so absorbed in his work that he ignored Hyojin's questions, which led to the confusion about the wrong airport route. Yet, instead of acknowledging that, he unfairly blamed her. Now, in hindsight, he knew the fault was partly his own. Soon, the editor-in-chief organized a company-wide party to celebrate their new collaboration with a famous artist, an achievement that was mostly credited to Sungjin. Although Sungjin wasn't fond of drinking, workplace hierarchy left him no choice. When the editor-in-chief raised his glass, Sungjin had to follow. Instead of resisting or making excuses, he downed the entire glass in one gulp, his face calm and expressionless. But moments later, as the night went on, he suddenly collapsed, completely unconscious from exhaustion and alcohol. Hyojin and Shinhyuk happened to come out at the same time and saw him faint on the ground. Without hesitation, they rushed to help and managed to take him back to his hotel room. After settling him in, Shinhyuk complained of thirst, and in his typical playful manner, ordered Hyojin to fetch him a bottle of water from Sungjin's refrigerator. When she opened the fridge, Hyojin was shocked to see it filled entirely with bottles of mineral water. No food, no snacks, just water. She realized that Sungjin was obsessed with maintaining his health and losing weight, to the point where he practically lived on water alone. For the first time, she felt a strange mix of worry and sympathy for him. But then another problem hit her. She realized she had accidentally left her phone inside Sungjin's room. That phone wasn't just a device. It contained all of her personal photos, including pictures with Hari. If Sungjin saw them, her secret about pretending to be someone else would be exposed. Determined to retrieve it, Hyojin tried to guess the password to get into Sungjin's room again, but every attempt failed. Frustrated and panicked, she finally remembered the old diary that both she and Sungjin had shared as children. Inside it were little codes and words from their past friendship. Using those childhood memories, she managed to guess the correct password and open the door. She quietly slipped inside, relieved to find Sungjin still asleep. Carefully, she grabbed her phone. But just as she was about to leave, something on his desk caught her attention. A jigsaw puzzle. She noticed that it was the same puzzle they had once put together when they were children. However, this puzzle was missing one piece. That missing piece represented more than just a puzzle. It symbolized their lost connection, their unfinished story. Hyojin couldn't resist. She slowly reached out, almost touching it, when suddenly Sungjin's voice cut through the silence. He had woken up without her noticing and appeared right behind her. His sudden presence startled her so much that she jumped in shock. At the same time, elsewhere, another secret was being revealed. At the hotel where Hari worked, a mysterious VIP guest had rented a luxury suite. Since the guest never came to pick up a music player he requested, Hari decided to return it herself. In the corridor, she ran into a scruffy-looking man dressed so casually that she mistook him for a loiterer and tried to drag him out. To her embarrassment, that sloppy man turned out to be the actual VIP guest. And shockingly, it was none other than Shinhyuk, the eccentric yet secretly wealthy Chaebol boy, who, despite his riches, had chosen to work as a simple editor at Passion magazine. Hari froze in disbelief, realizing she had just mistaken one of the company's most interesting hidden figures for a vagrant back with Hyojin. The tension between her and Sungjin grew thick in the quiet hotel room. She had not only risked exposure, but had also been caught standing in front of something deeply personal from their past. And now, Sungjin, wide awake, was staring right at her,